So today we'll be presenting on how to give effective presentations for legal education and advocacy. And so my name is Steele. I'm the Director of Consulting at Just Tech. We provide consulting services, mostly technology related to legal services providers. I got my start in legal aid at a legal aid firm in upstate New York, Legal Assistance of Western New York. Within my first couple of weeks there, my supervisor walked into my office and said, "Hey, I've got a presentation in 2 weeks. I'm going to need to have you give it for me." So I kind of got thrown into the presentation space, but since then, I've really taken to it and really enjoy presenting. And joining me today is Sart Rowe.
Hey, I am over at Northwest Justice Project here in the Seattle area. I run a project called the Legal Services National Technology Assistance Project, which is really designed to help anybody in legal services with anything tech related. I was a coder before going to law school. I also occasionally teach privacy law and copyright law. And making good presentations is one of the things I'm really passionate about, because we have over 20 free webinars that are available to anyone in the community that we put on every year as part of a TIG grant.
Great. So to start today, we are going to be reviewing a couple topics. We will start with building your presentation. We will also talk about framing your message, and then presentation tips and tricks.
If we could pause for just a second, I think we're getting a little bit of an echo. Can we mute PA Legal Aid Network and see if that's where the echo is coming from?
Sure.
Excellent. Let's go on.
Thanks so much. Great. Thanks, Sart. So our agenda today, we're going to be reviewing some tips on building your presentation, so looking at PowerPoint and Google Slides. We're going to be talking about framing your message, as well as presentation tips and tricks. Throughout the presentation, you will see a series of tools and resources that you can use when you are putting presentations together for yourself. So feel free to kind of jot them down as we discuss them, and also, as was stated at the beginning, we will be circulating the presentation. So, building your presentation. So why do we want to use a visual presentation? Why is this important? And we really want to focus on enhancing our discussion, right? So there are a number of things we can use these visual presentations for. You can use it for training and supervision internally. You can do community legal education. You can even use them in litigation. The Superior Court of Pennsylvania said that it was okay for litigators to start using PowerPoints during closing arguments. So that's kind of a really interesting way to use it. But so we're really going to be focusing today on the community legal education and the training component of utilizing PowerPoint or another visual presentation tool for your presentation. And again, you really want it to add value to what you're saying. You don't want these presentations to be distracting. You don't want it to take away from your message and content. You really want it to complement it, and you really want to make sure that what you're producing is really taking your message to the next level. But that's not the only reason that we would be using these PowerPoints or other visual presentation tools. We can also use them for, instead of a one-time training, for kind of ongoing trainings like the folks at Northwest Justice Project and Sart have done.
So at Northwest Justice Project a few years back, we started a YouTube channel, and we've taken some of our most common questions through our hotline or trainings that we're doing directly in the community, and we've created videos for those. We've got over 500 subscribers on that channel and over 120,000 hits. If we're going to do a clinic on juvenile record sealing, it makes sense for us to create a 3 to 5 minute video that has some of those major points and make it available to the whole state. And that video in particular has gotten over 4,000 views, which has really increased the impact for it. And we can also see when people go from that video to our statewide website. So creating those short little takeaways from the trainings to try to reach a broader audience is extremely useful. And then we can also do them in a second language at a much lower cost, or make them accessible via things like captioning. We have experimented a lot with trying to use visual elements and plain language in these, really targeting them at individuals in the community. And then we have now started to do focus group testing of the videos with the community. It's one of those things that I strongly recommend is testing any of your shorter trainings or videos with the community. There are just pieces of legalese that make perfect sense to us because we've been doing it for 10 or 20 years. The community will have no idea what we're talking about, and it has really improved our videos that way. There are several tools that we use to do this, and we're going to talk about two of those tools right now.
So the one that most of you are probably pretty familiar with is PowerPoint. Microsoft PowerPoint is available as a desktop application as well as part of the Office 365 suite. The Office 365 version is a little bit more limited than your desktop version, but you can still create pretty good presentations using the online Office 365 version if that's what you have access to. So I wanted to kind of walk through the ribbon a little bit to talk about some of the PowerPoint features that can be used to really help enhance your presentation. So here I'm looking at the Insert tab on the ribbon in Microsoft PowerPoint. And this is where you'll do things like add new slides, insert images, insert charts. You can actually insert videos into PowerPoint, which can be really great, especially if you have the AV to support it when you are presenting. It allows you to take screenshots and insert tables. So we'll get into some of the benefits of these a little bit later in the presentation. But just wanted to kind of point out where you would go in PowerPoint to do this. PowerPoints can really be so much more than just text. So we want to make sure that we know where we can add that information into the presentation. So the other piece I wanted to point out was our design, right? And this is something that I think a lot of people potentially get stuck on, right? You want your PowerPoint presentation to kind of stick out and be a little bit different, but you never want it to be too flashy. We're well beyond the days where there are like 5 templates that you could choose from in PowerPoint. So you saw just this rotating list of 5 different templates that everybody was using when they were using PowerPoints. And so in the design tab of the ribbon, you can go through and you can see different templates and select what makes sense for you. We'll talk about branding in a little bit. So if you have a template that you use as an organization, you would obviously want to be using that in lieu of a PowerPoint template. But what's really great here is not only do they have these templates, but they have the design idea button, which takes the general template and then applies some different designs to it. So you can kind of take it one step further and really take the image of your PowerPoint to the next level. Again, you don't want this to be a distraction. You don't want to get too wrapped up in developing that design, but still it's an important thing to take into account. The other thing that I wanted to call out real quick on the design toolbar is the slide size, which allows you to change the aspect ratio of the slides. So if they kind of have that widescreen look versus the more square look, that you will want that to cater to, again, to the AV that you have available. Most things now are widescreen, but it does allow you to kind of tailor the look of that presentation. So next, the transitions. This is something that can be a little bit tricky. You can obviously find the transition information on the transition tab on the PowerPoint ribbon, and these allow the slides to look a little bit different as they come in. It allows them to come in from the left or right, or there's even ones that like it makes an origami crane and like flies away. But you have to be careful with these, right? Again, you really don't want them to be distractions. I remember back when I was in elementary school learning about PowerPoint, when all of us 3rd graders were building our first PowerPoints, we were having wild transitions with sounds and explosions and things like that. And that's obviously nothing that we want to be doing in a professional setting. But it can, again, kind of help enhance your message. Or often, right, there are opportunities to be giving more fun kind of presentations to folks. So that allows that to happen as well. Lastly, presenting. So again, we'll get into this a little bit later, but obviously one of the big parts about preparing for giving a presentation is practicing. And there's some really great features built into the slideshow functionality of PowerPoint that allow you to help get an idea of your timing, to see how this all looks. You can record the show and kind of play it back. Your speaker notes are here. That's one really great thing about PowerPoint is the speaker notes tools. And if you are presenting from a podium with a laptop in front of you and the presentation beside you, you can pull up your speaker notes so you can see which slide you're on. You can see your notes. You can see how long you've been on that slide, how much time has passed. And it's a really great way to get your timing down, especially for presentations where timing is really important.
So I'm going to be talking about Google Slides. I do almost all of my presentations in Google Slides. I had a ATJ Tech fellow who was here this summer who did a complete video on getting your credit report in Google Slides, including animation. It is a wonderful, simple, free tool, and it is very easy to pick up. It has the advantage of less features, which sounds a little bit weird for comparing it to PowerPoint, but it really is trimmed down to kind of the essential features that you need for making a great presentation. One of the big advantages it has is it's super easy to collaborate. On your upper right-hand corner, there's this share button. This whole presentation was put together through Google Docs in using their slide tool by us collaboratively editing it while talking over Zoom as we're doing right now. It can give out a link that just lets people look at the slides, which we provided a link where people can view the slides and download the slides, but it also lets you provide a link that lets someone comment or take full control and edit it. And it makes it extremely easy for multiple people in different locations to edit, add branding, clean things up, or even improve each other's slides. One of the other things that it has is some built-in tools for sharing. By default, you can share the slides publicly, get a URL where anybody can see the presentation that you're putting forward and ask questions about it. It's a wonderful feature. It has some of the basic kind of webinar tools built in, and it's a great way to do it on a budget.
Speaking of which, I just put the link to this slide deck in the chat, so now you all have access to the slide deck. So the next piece we wanted to touch on was framing your message, and the important components of that. There are people who are very, very good at this, and there are organizations that exist solely to help us frame our message. So I just wanted to touch on some of the concepts real quick, but there are some excellent resources out there about framing your message, especially within our space. So Voices for Civil Justice is a national communications initiative that taps the awareness-raising power of the media to spotlight the critical role of civil legal aid in assuring fairness for all in the justice system. They connect reporters with the national network of civil legal aid sources and help them find human interest stories that support their reporting. They pitch story ideas and opinion pieces about civil legal aid to regional media outlets and provide messaging guidance and other communication tools to advocates. You'll notice that I am using the word civil legal aid, right? That is something that they're really pushing as part of their messaging, that the work that we do is civil legal aid work, and that is all kind of part of the branding and the messaging about what we do. So they want to make sure that you emphasize a shared value as part of your presentation, and to start with an emphasized shared value. They want to make sure that you keep the messaging simple, and also use real life examples in your presentations. A little bit later, Sart will talk about the importance of storytelling and humanizing your presentation, and that's something that the folks at Voices for Civil Justice really push. We do a lot of really, really great work in the civil legal aid community, and we want to make sure that we spread those stories about our good work. And so over the course of the work that we're doing, even if you yourself are not a communications person for the organization, you should be collecting your stories and conducting your interviews. So if somebody comes to you with a good funding application, or if media approaches about something that's been going on, that we have a collection of stories and interviews all ready to go to help discuss those issues and get our message out. Internally, something else that you can do as part of your presentation, and I discussed this a little bit earlier, is brand your presentations, right? You want to make sure that folks know who you are and why you're the expert on this given area. But again, you don't want this to be distracting. So you want your branding to be clear, concise, and consistent, right? So anybody within your organization should have the same branding of their presentation. And this also, you hear about this a lot with email signatures and business cards, right? You want all of that to be uniform. You want folks to know that when you're talking to a group that you represent this organization, and so do the other people that they're going to hear from in that given presentation or at the conference. But again, you don't want it to be a component that people get too distracted by. So I definitely encourage folks to work with their communications teams, if you have them, to kind of talk about how you can brand your presentation. And don't be shy about it, and definitely don't be shy about making sure that you stay who you are. Always, if you'll notice in our presentation, at the beginning we had our contact information. You'll see again that at the end we have our contact information. We are very clear about where we're from and what we do, and you want to make sure that you are doing that while you're giving your presentations. All right, so let's talk about some presentation tips and tricks. So Sart and I are going to kind of go back and forth on some of the tips and tricks that we have for completing a good presentation. So first, you want to prepare. You want to set the groundwork for a good presentation. So you should do a little bit of legwork on your own if the information already hasn't been provided to you. You're going to want to see what AV is available, what the room looks like that you're going to be presenting in. Do you have, hopefully if they're asking you to do a PowerPoint, you have access to a computer and screen, but verify that. I once went in to give a presentation on data visualization. It was all about pretty graphs and charts, and I walk in and there was no screen. I was like, well, how am I ever going to give a data visualization presentation without people being able to see what I'm actually talking about? So, there's a couple hiccups. You get someone to help you get everything set up, but just making sure that as part of your prep, that's something that you're thinking about. If there's any audio involved in your presentation, making sure that everything is kind of plugged into the speakers. Sart will talk a little bit later in the presentation about what you want to make available if you are going to be recording your presentation.
Just a little bit of an addition on the audio video. If you're doing these presentations online and you're bringing speakers in, make sure to get them to connect with you at least 30 minutes in advance, or preferably even a day or two before if they've never used the technology, to make sure everything sounds good. We've definitely had problems in the past with having computers that just didn't work, or people didn't have the access to install the software correctly on their computer, or the court system had locked the computers down so much they couldn't even get out to the internet from where they were trying to present from. So just make sure you've got that practice session or time put in place.
Yes, for sure. Your audience, right? So you're going to want to know who you are presenting to. Is it a room full of EDs? Is it a room full of attorneys? Is it potential clients? And having a good idea of who your audience is will help give you a really good idea about how you want to frame your presentation. Speakers are another big one. Do you want to speak alone? Do you want to create a panel of experts? Do you want to put plants in the audience? How do you want to be presenting, and who do you want to be involved? Do you want it to be a little bit more of a lecture style? Do you want it to be more interactive? And that's where the format comes in. Often when you're asked to speak, people will give you some guidance about what they want to see as far as format. For example, you'll see, if any of you have been to the LSC TIG conference, there's these rapid fire tech talks where people have 6 minutes and 20 slides, and the slides auto advance, and they're very quick, they're very fast paced, they're very fun, a lot of images, very little text on the slides, things like that, as well as something longer, something a little bit more lecture style versus interactive, right? And if you are doing an interactive presentation and you're a little bit nervous about making sure the audience is going to be interactive, as I mentioned earlier, you can think about putting plants in the audience. And what I mean by that is, you know, getting in touch with a couple people before the presentation and say, hey, I know you're an expert on X, Y, and Z. If I'm going to pose this question to the audience, can you be ready to answer that and help get the conversation going? So just letting folks know that you're going to either be calling them out or asking them questions, and having them prepared to help engage you and the rest of the audience. And again, another really important one is your time frame. You want to make sure that you set up your presentation in a way that falls within the time constraints that you have been given. So now that we have laid the groundwork for our presentation, let's talk about some other tips. This is my #1 presentation tip, hands down. Slides do not equal speaker notes. Slides in presentations should not be full of text and should not be read from corner to corner. This is, you know, sometimes really difficult to to make that transition. There's a lot of folks who you want to get as much information out as possible, but again, your information should really be complementing, or your presentation should really be complementing your information rather than the sole source of your information. So what you can do is you can bullet it out. So we've taken those 3 paragraphs of text and bulleted them out a little bit, right? This is much easier to read. I can continue to talk about my topic while the audience can see some various highlighted bullet points. To make that even better, you can add some images to those bullet points and also make those bullets a little bit shorter, a little bit more plain language, especially when giving presentation to potential clients or the client population, because you really want to make sure that they are fully understanding what they need to be, especially when we're talking about their legal rights and information. So to take that one step further, right, in the example that I gave earlier about an Ignite talk or a rapid fire tech talk, it comes down to a lot of images. Again, if I'm telling a story, if I am really trying to connect with the audience through my presentation, I can use big images instead of text so that folks are listening to the words I'm saying and that the images in the background are helping me tell my story.
Right, and when you've got those speaker notes that you're making available to people where they can download them about the things you're talking about, you can really clean up the visuals to look awesome and complement what you are saying. And a lot of people also run into problems of where can they find images that they can use for their presentations, images that they're going to be able to reuse and share out there. Northwest Justice Project ran into an issue with one of our reports a few years back where there were some beautiful images, but the rights weren't properly cleared for them, which is very embarrassing on us being a law firm. But we have a policy in place where we find and use open source images that are out there. I worked at Creative Commons for a little while, and they've got a beautiful search, and that search lets you find all different types of content ranging from audio to video to images that are licensed in a way that you can easily use them. On several of these slides, such as the last one, you saw that there was an accreditation down in the lower left-hand corner, and that's all we needed to be able to use that image for free. The Unsplash is another source of some images that you can use for presentations. Look at the licensing that's there on sites, make sure that you're following it, but there's a lot of beautiful images out there that will add to your presentations. When you are talking about something on a slide, also zoom into that particular area. So as I was talking about the Creative Commons search, this is a zoom into the search bar. There's 2 different options on it. Use for commercial purposes and be able to modify, adapt, or build upon. If you check both of these, you will get the most openly usable images out there. You'll be able to use them even if you were repurposing something or adding ads or other things to it, which is often not a concern for legal services. The more important is the modify, adapt, or build upon. If you're going to edit or change those in any way, having that checkbox is extremely useful. But your slide shouldn't just be a screenshot of the entire website. It should focus in then on the pieces or pull out the pieces. We also did that when we were looking both at the PowerPoint and at Google Slides, is emphasize that area, made a pull out of it, and made it very easy for people to see what we were looking at. Another major issue that we run into is people attempting to do live demos. I like live demos a lot. But we had an issue about 1.5 years ago where I was live demoing a video site and the video site crashed. The best way to avoid having those problems is make sure your speaker has backup screenshots of everything they're trying to show on the site. You don't want to scrap an entire presentation because there's a problem somewhere where you're having trouble getting through a firewall or accessing something. Yes, practice the live demo, but have a backup that is ready for the live demo.
And that's also super critical because of for the presentation itself, right? So here we are, we're doing this presentation in Google Slides, which relies on a good internet connection. Mm-hmm. So if you get into a conference center, a hotel, and the Wi-Fi is spotty, and you go to pull up your presentation and it's on Google Slides, or you go to do your live demo and you don't have good internet, it can really throw you for a loop. So make sure that you have a good backup plan in place and that you have a desktop version of your presentation, even on a USB stick, and that you have those backup screenshots. Or even sometimes people will do local screen caps and video recordings also of their live demos that are saved locally so that they can be shown if there's some sort of issue with internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Google Slides has a download function to it that you can download it as a PDF or a PowerPoint so that you will have those physical offline versions, even though it's a complete online program. The next thing is more on how we can really improve with stories. Giving best practices or giving case law or giving tips means a lot more to people if you can embed it in the story. The reason that I share some of the mistakes that have happened at LSNTAP and where we've had problems, because we put on over 140 webinars in the last 5 years, is to help people remember that and to humanize it. We have also looked at our social media statistics, both for our webinars and for content that we're doing from Northwest Justice Project. If we can put a client story, if we can put a client out there, if we can put a human face in front of something, if we can put a visual image that humanizes the issue, the statistics for how long people stay on, how much they engage go way up. Having those stories, it helps people stay engaged, understand what's going on, but also really be able to connect with it personally and recall it later. Just very, very important that we look at these legal issues that we're dealing with, this legal education, and take it out of that abstract rules that were taught in law school and put it into particular case examples. Definitely get permission from whoever you're working with in order to be able to tell those stories, but those stories will help other people identify with what's going on. It will help funders understand what you're doing, and it will increase the impact that those messages have over time.
And if you haven't seen one before, and I know I brought them up earlier, definitely check out an Ignite talk. They're all over YouTube, but the people who give, they have whole conferences where people give these Ignite talks. And these are the rapid fire ones with the set number of slides, auto advancing over a set period of time. And those people can tell a story, and those people can tell stories really, really well and use their PowerPoint presentations really, really well in how they tell their stories. So even if you're not giving an Ignite talk, definitely check some of them out. Just put it in, just search Ignite in YouTube and you'll find some. And it really can give you some good insight on to how to approach the whole storytelling component of your presentation.
Yeah, the Ignite Talks are put on by O'Reilly. I definitely also recommend giving them a try. Anyone can do them. My 8-year-old daughter, who is now 16, gave one on how to get your parents to do what you want and the psychology of hacking systems. If she can do it in front of 450 people, anybody can. TED Talks are also another wonderful source of beautiful presentations that are under 20 minutes. They work with coaches. They're very, very well produced. They are online, but they really show how you can give a powerful presentation. Slides can act as a wonderful marketing tool and can be a way that people can follow along. If I'm giving a physical presentation somewhere with lawyers, lawyers love paper, and having a printout of the slides where people can take notes on that is extremely useful. For presentations that we do for LSNTAP, I try to get my speakers to give me slides a week in advance. It's like pulling teeth. They love to wait to the last second and tweak things 3 seconds before the presentation. But if you can get slides in advance out to people, it will give them an idea of what the presentation is about and help work as a marketing tool. At least during the presentation, get those out and then have a link to them with the presentation materials later, because people will not want to just skip around in the video. They'll want to use the slides as a reminder of what they learned from it. So share those early, often, and after, including with recordings. Anything that you can do to make it more interactive is definitely helpful. In a lot of the presentations, if we end up with questions that relate to something like an acronym or not understanding a particular piece, being able to answer a short question during the presentation does add to the interactiveness. A lot of modern webinar tools will give you the ability to ask the audience a question, figure out what their background is, how much they know about a particular item. If I was going to give a presentation on web accessibility, I might ask at the beginning of the presentation, how many people here are familiar with W3C standards, and then have a yes, no. If everybody says that they're familiar, I can go a little bit deeper into it. If 50% of the audience does not know what those W3C standards are, then I need to give some more intro time. And that is one of the big differences between doing a live presentation or an online presentation. When you have an audience, figure out ways to interact with them. You'll get better engagement, they'll learn more, and you'll be able to teach better towards what they are familiar with. We've left time at the end of this presentation for Q&A, and we definitely will be engaging in that.
And one thing that I really like to do as far as the polling the audience is, you know, you may have an idea, like I discussed earlier, about who your audience is, but I find it to be a really useful tool going into the presentation to figure out who's in the room, right? How many of you are lawyers? Who here is a techie? Who here is a programmer? You know, where are fiscal folks? Where are communications folks? And that really helps you to get an idea at that moment, who's in the room, you know, potentially what their expectations are, what those particular groups are going to be interested in learning. If nobody in the group raises their hand about being involved in some of the fiscal work within their organization, I'm going to go a little bit quicker through the that component of the presentation and focus on some of the other ones where people in the room. So it can be a really really cool way to, and also it shows that it gets engagement going right away, right? It shows that that's what you want to be doing.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is when you show up to a room, or when you see the number of people that are at a presentation, you can really customize based on that. There are things that you can't do at 500 people that if you show up to something that was scheduled for 30 and you have 7, you're able to then turn that into a more interactive discussion. You're able to get people to give an introduction about themselves and why they showed up, and customize that and make it an interactive experience. If you have a low number of individuals, there's a possibility to be much more engaging.
For sure, absolutely. And if you're all prepped and ready to have to have an interactive session and all you get are crickets, then you should be ready for have a contingency plan in place. So how do we want to deal with this, right? You have 15 minutes left and nobody's talking and everybody's just staring at you and you're in this room full of 100 people. What do you want to do? So one option is, if you are on a panel, to set it up so that you have some predetermined discussion questions with your panel. So before you meet, while you're working on your presentation, lay out some questions that you can ask each other and to really start getting the conversation going. You will want to obviously have this a little bit pre-planned. You don't necessarily want anybody to be put on the spot in front of a room full of people. So you're going to want to discuss it with folks beforehand. Think about how you all can interact as a panel to hopefully bring some other audience members in. Another way to do it that takes it kind of outside of the context of the presentation that's happening in the room is you can do what we did. You can share out the presentation and you can make comments available. And so you can kind of keep the conversation going. And this kind of allows for folks who maybe not wanted to participate or thought of an idea after the fact to continue to engage with the presentation. I have been involved in the statewide technology conference in New York, and we've done this with a couple of our panels. We have a local listserv, right? The presentation goes out and people are able to kind of still engage and enter their questions and comments in and get responses from not only the presenters, but other people as well. So if executed properly, and if you have a group who's willing to be interactive after the fact, it can be a pretty effective way to encourage interaction. And then the other thing that I talked about earlier, right, having folks in the audience who you've prepped as well can help with that interaction. And also, you know, and this, a lot of this speaks for itself, but when you're giving your presentation, to help make the audience feel more comfortable with you as their panelist and more comfortable interacting with you, giving your presentation, not just sitting kind of slumped behind your chair, right? Get up, move around the room. I'm a pacer when I give a presentation at a conference, so I'm often pacing back and forth if the mic setup allows me to. And, you know, really kind of get up and get moving and try to kind of further engage your audience, right? Because it can be really challenging when you're giving a presentation and you've spent a lot of time on it. You know you're an expert, and you look out and you see a lot of blank stares looking back at you, right? You know, sometimes you may be given the 8:30 a.m. slot, the second day of a conference in New Orleans, and that's just what you have to be dealing with. You have to be dealing with a bunch of tired people who were out on Bourbon Street all night and now are coming to your presentation. And so you have to find ways to make your presentation exciting and engaging.
I think one of the things that we did specifically when working with Idealware to do tech trainings for us, they do tech trainings for the general nonprofit audience. And the content isn't always really customized for legal services. So we had them add a legal services color commentator to those presentations. We've done the same thing when doing security presentations that were from people outside of the legal services realm, is find someone who is a lawyer and a techie who understands security to do color commentary, to make sure that they're explaining acronyms and that they're asking questions or changing the focus to be specific to your audience. So you're basically planting an extra panelist that it's their focus to make sure that the content is relevant to the particular audience and it has a more conversational style to it.
Excuse me, everyone. I'm sorry. This is Kelly. If I could just break in. I sent a message in the chat box out to you. We're having a technical glitch for some reason, and I'm unable to launch the polls that I was going to use to track your participation to give you CLE credits. So if you could please instead email me at kbockyecklley at PA Legal Aid humanize.net, or if you could just go in the chat box and find my email address. Please email me so that I can give you CLE credit for your participation in the webinar. And again, I apologize for that. I'm not sure what's going on.
Right, and I've shared that chat box, or that chat box message does have her full email in it. So if you pull down on the chat screen, you should be able to access her email there.
Yes, thank you.
I was just hoping that our content was so engaging that she forgot to launch the polls. Okay.
All right, so this again goes without saying, but practice, practice, practice. And really kind of figure out what presentation style works for you. I think that's really important. Some folks like to have note cards and read off of their note cards. Some folks like to just have their speaker notes and kind of cover to cover read their presentation. Some folks like to just kind of go more off the cuff. So really kind of figure out what works for you and practice that. And practice the different methodologies too. You know, I think often people are more comfortable with their notes. And I know that when I used to do presentations off of notes, I come off as a little bit more robotic, a little bit less dynamic, and I end up stumbling over my words, but that's not the case for everybody, right? Some people feel so much more comfortable when they have their notes in front of them that they are very good. They're very good at reading out loud, right? So they're able to be more dynamic because they're more comfortable because they know exactly what they're going to say. So it's different for everybody. So figure out what really works for you. Practice those different styles. Practice in the mirror, practice on your dog, practice on your spouse, on your colleagues, and really kind of get comfortable with it, because it really shows when people are comfortable with their presentation. I think it really helps, again, with that engagement, and it helps your audience absorb more of your information.
I cannot emphasize this one too much. The shorter the presentation is, the more practice time per the length of the presentation. If you're going to do those Ignite talks, they are tough. They take a lot of practice. If you only have 5 minutes to make a point to someone, you've got to be clear, you've got to be concise, and working with a individual that's a member of your potential audience to give you feedback helps a lot. We're bringing in an expert later this year to talk about AI and how it can possibly be used in legal services. He's got a PhD in physics. He's a really smart guy, but he has only spoken to lawyers one other time. And we're working with him on advanced for practical examples for the law and all of the terms that he uses on a daily basis that need to be explained in plain language. Get that user testing out there front and center as part of your practicing. In order to get people to show up or watch the recording, there really is a lot of background work that goes into presentations that people don't normally see. We talked a little bit about sharing slides in advance. Beyond that, you want to schedule trainings at least 30 days in advance. You want to create online ways that people can register that give them a iCalendar standard invite that they can put into Outlook, that they can put into their Google Calendar, that they can put into their Apple Calendar. Having those two things goes a long way to helping individuals remember that they really want to be at that presentation. Find listservs that are relevant to your community. Here in Washington State, we have a statewide access to justice technology listserv. We share some of our national trainings that are relevant to that audience on that listserv. We also go to community events and walk into the community event with a list of all of our free trainings for the rest of the year on a physical piece of paper if we're talking to lawyers, because lawyers love paper. They love dead trees. Make sure that you have ways to get it out to the community. We tried sharing them to lawyers on Facebook. Lawyers hate Facebook. Our clients love Facebook. If we want to do a training on how to deal with foreclosure, we put that out on Facebook, and then we get partners in the community who have specific connections with client populations to share that. So we got a community center here in the International District to share that. We got the community center that we were actually talking at to also share that. We got our local law schools to share that. Using your partners in your Alliance for Equal Justice or whatever your statewide organization is for doing this type of stuff, reach out to them and let them know about the trainings and help empower them to reach out to their clients for you. Getting good attendance is a lot of marketing, and marketing isn't something that we really teach enough in the law. And when we are creating free legal resources and trying to help people on a mass scale, it doesn't matter how awesome your presentation is or how wonderful that article you have on your website is. If nobody reads it, it's not going to have the impact. And then after the presentation is done, have follow-up. Put it out on whatever media is available for people where they're going to see it. If there is a newsletter that goes out to individuals or a community center that is willing to share a link to that video or the script of that presentation, go to them and have them share whatever you have as archived resources. It will help you long-term in getting those analytics to show that it worked, and then collect the analytics around this so that next time you write a grant, you can say, we reached out to 10,000 people with this video and we want to make 5 more videos and we want to engage the community to actively participate in creating those. When doing presentations for that you're going to put up on YouTube, although we're going to take this entire presentation and put it up on YouTube, we'll get some hits from it, but taking the key points and distilling it down to less than 20 minutes works so much better. And having a short version of the video can also act as marketing for the longer video. A lot of people on YouTube will see a really long video and won't watch it or will only watch a few minutes in. If you have a summary of some of the key points and the ability for someone to navigate directly in to some of those other areas, that's very helpful. If you have a longer presentation that covers 5 or 6 different things about evictions, consider chopping that into 5 separate videos and referencing them between each other, because people go to a search engine trying to answer a single question. And if your video really covers that single question, if you pulled that out of a long presentation that you did somewhere else, that's very, very useful. The analytics on YouTube are amazing, as is Google Analytics for putting any of this stuff up online. They will give you feedback on, are people watching the whole thing? How engaged are they? Where are they leaving? And then you can try to figure out why they might be leaving those trainings and how you can improve those. I also strongly recommend getting law students or fellows to write up a summary and blog about the trainings that they go to. We require with our ATJ Tech fellows, and actually anybody who interns with my project or is a fellow on my project, that they attend CLEs, they attend trainings, they attend community events, and that they write up 1,000 to 1,500 word plain language summary of those. And then they drop a video in, they put the slides in, they put any PDFs or any links to our statewide website or other resources there. And that helps significantly for individuals to be able to really digest that information. And it also helps individuals with SEO. So search engine optimization goes way up if you have a short description of the video. It looks like 1 or 2 people might have lost sound here. Anna, can you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, excellent. So the next few tips are kind of on the practical side. It matters a lot if you're recording things, what sound quality you have. As you see, I'm wearing a headset here so that we don't get echo, but I'm also using the mic that we're talking about right here. It's USB, it's about $100 to $120, and it increases the quality significantly. Especially when you're dealing with post-production and turning it into videos, it helps a lot. Getting together with your speakers, though, in advance And listening to them beforehand can help identify whether there is a need for a mic. Some people have great headsets that have built-in good mics. Some modern laptops actually have good mics in them. Most of them do not. We've had presenters try to use voice over IP from their computers and bad mics, and you can really tell, and it hurts the quality of the presentation significantly. Next thing is, if you're going to a conference, not just a mic, but having a Zoom recorder is extremely useful. This is a piece of equipment for about $220 that will let you plug into the audio of the conference, what's being distributed throughout the whole room, and record all of the different mics that are there. The quality that you'll pull away in audio from a panel is so much better than just what's going to come through on a single shotgun mic or a mic from a camera in any way. I would definitely recommend looking into a piece of equipment like this if you are going to go to conventions and record those trainings for people who are not at the convention. It's a worthy investment. Talk to your convention staff tech-wise to make sure that it will be able to interact. But the Zoom mics have standard audio outputs that let you just jack into a soundboard and work really, really well. For the video side of things, smartphones are actually extremely good. The cameras on smartphones right now are better than what I would have spent $3,000 to $5,000 on 5 years ago. I recommend getting some type of a tripod so that it is stable, and make sure that you've got it either charged or plugged in. If you really want to buy a dedicated piece of equipment, you can do that in the $400 to $800 range pretty easily. GoPro, whatever their latest version is top of the line for what you're paying. It's the equivalent of what for other people tends to be about $500 to $900 and even $1,500 in their small portable little $400 to $600, whatever their current version is. They shoot in the highest quality. They're very easy to use, very easy to export. They're very durable, even waterproof. Not that I've killed a laptop with a soda once. Most of the major manufacturers have a camera at about the $700 range that is designed for vlogging, for recording video, and have a mount on the top where you can put a little shotgun mic on there. The 77D I've used significantly on a YouTube channel where I've got over 500 videos on it. I've had very good experience with them, but any of the kind of vlogging level cameras at that $500 to $700 range is going to give you extremely good quality. It's going to be slightly better than what you're looking at on a phone, but honestly, the modern smartphones are really good there also. Make sure to get a copy of your slides for post-production from your presenters. If you've got a video just of a presenter talking and there's important stuff where their slides are in the background, if you have a copy of those slides, you can drop those slides in simple video editing software that really makes it much, much easier for people to see it. Having a copy of the slides is useful not only for the marketing, but for creating a great video or a great way to share it later. Another thing that people tend not to think about until it's too late is some type of a copyright release and right of publicity release. For LSNTAP, we write these into our contracts with all of our webinar participants. We will occasionally also just write a memo of understanding with someone that they sign if they are doing it for free and we don't have a contract. We have put up a copyright and personal release on our website that is written in plain language, that is extremely clear, very easy to read. We took one that was about 3 pages, 3 times as many words, and really tried to distill it down. The next version hopefully will add some cool little images to it. But the way that this is set up is that it gives you the right to share it, to use it in materials, use it other ways as long as you can, as long as you give credit back to the presenters. And I'm going to drop the link right now into the chat to directly get to that presentation. Or not to that presentation, to that copyright release form. It is available. Feel free to download it. Feel free to edit it. Feel free to take it to local counsel in case there's something specific with right of publicity law in your state. This was written with general copyright laws nationally, but right of publicity is a state-by-state doctrine, and this is kind of written with what is the basics for right of publicity nationally, but it might vary a little bit locally. And yes, there is a copy of that, or that link is now in the chat. So this is our contact information. Both of us are available to help people out. My program, LS-NTAP, is funded by LSC. We have an email list where anyone can join it. You don't need to be from a LSC funded program. We believe that a lot of innovation comes from sharing across different programs. So we have people from the disability rights community. We have individuals from foundations, from funders. We have people from the academic community on the email list. Please feel free to email me and I can add you to our email list of about 800 people who can help with anything tech related regarding presentations, that type of stuff. There's our contact information. I apparently advanced the wrong slide. Happens to all of us.
We have a couple minutes left for questions. Does anybody have any questions? As Sart said, we can feel free to email us, especially those of you who are presenting at the conference at the end of the month, if you have any questions or want some feedback on your slide decks.
Yeah, I'm happy to even sit down and do a walkthrough with somebody of their presentation and help them out with it.
So if anyone has any questions, please type them in the chat box now. And again, just a reminder, if you are requesting CLE credits for this webinar participation, please email me, BOCKYECKLEY@PALegalAid.net, or you could just call Plan and you'll find me here.
And while we wait to see if there's any questions, just one little last tip. If you get to the end of your presentation and you have a lot of time, or you made some time for questions and there aren't any questions, feel free to put in some bonus content. We did it with this presentation. We have some other tips that you'll be able to see when you click into the presentation. So feel free to add to the end, and there's nothing wrong with having some bonus content at the end of your presentation.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm sorry, I was just going to say it doesn't look like we're getting any questions.
Okay. Well, live streaming at this point is extremely easy for in-person presentations. Pretty much all of the major services add the ability to do live streaming. Obviously, we're using Zoom here, but YouTube has a live streaming option that is very easy to use. Periscope, which I believe was bought out by Twitter, has a very easy live streaming option. Facebook makes it easy to live stream, and even the White House has done some computer science stuff and live streams through Twitch Creative. So it is definitely well recommended to consider adding a live streaming component to any type of a presentation that you're giving in person for people that aren't there. I would also recommend having some type of a survey feature at the end of presentations so that you can get feedback over how did they like the speakers, what did they understand, would they like to see more trainings on the topic, that type of stuff. We do an automated survey for all of our LS-NTAP trainings that comes out at the end that gives us feedback over those and helps us plan our programming for the next year.
Kelly, this is Christine. We had a question about the CLE. Is one email, will that suffice, or do you need two?
Yes.
One email will suffice.
Yes, that's fine.